This provincial election pits, of course, two female party leaders head-to-head for the first time in Ontario history. It also includes a total of 145 women running for office. Joining us now to discuss how Queen's Park can further open its doors to women across the province, here's Donna Dasko. She's a former national chair of Equal Voice and director of the Ontario Challenge for Equal Voice Toronto. And Donna, it's good to have you back here at TVO.
Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
Let us share with our viewers numbers that you already know because they're yours. Here's what it looks like right now. Sheldon, if we could. Candidates, female, each party this election. For the Liberals, they've got just over a third of their candidates as women. For the Progressive Conservative Party, just over a quarter. For the NDP, which has the best numbers here, just over 40%. And for the Green Party, again, like the Liberals, just over a third. And then if we can compare how women participation is doing now to previous elections, in the 2007 campaign, almost 30% of all candidates running were women. The last time out in 2011, it was just over 30%. And this time, the numbers are nudged up even a little bit more, almost 34% female candidates running for office this time. Donna, how satisfied are you with these numbers?
I think the numbers are pretty good. I'm satisfied with them, and I especially like the trend line. You know, it's going up and up and up. It's a good trend line, and when we asked the political parties earlier this year to make an effort to nominate more women, generally they've done that, and we're seeing this in the results. So,
just curious about the reaction you get when you go to them and you say, you know, you really got to do better at nominating more female candidates. What's the reaction you get?
We got a good response from them. We sent letters to the leaders early this year, and at that point there were a lot of nominations that were open for most of the parties, and we asked them to make a pledge, actually, nominate more women, because that's the only way we're going to get more women elected. And generally, their answers were quite good. We got very positive responses back, and generally, they've stepped up to the plate. And so we see the increase that we see here today: 145 women running.
Now, of course, if you dive down a little deeper, and there's another story, which is apparently in only 40 of 145 women are running in ridings that you have identified as potentially winnable. So there has always been this annoying trend of parties nominating women, but only in ridings that can't be won.
Exactly. So that's the downside of this whole development, is that we can have 145. And by the way, you know, that 145 number, Steve, how many seats are there at Queen's Park? 107, right? So there are well enough women who have put their names forward to actually fill the entire legislature with women, right? So 145, there are a lot of applicants for this job. But when you look at the winnable ridings, that is the ridings where the parties have a good chance of winning, either because they currently hold them or they came very, very close last time, only 40 women. So you can see we lose all those women who have put their names forward but are not running in those ridings.
I do note, though, that there are, it feels anyway, like there are more ridings this time where the former sitting member is a woman and the prime challenger is a woman, and it may even be that the third place party is a woman. And I think like Kitchener-Waterloo is a great example.
Exactly.
Where in fact all four major parties have female candidates. Are you seeing more of that?
I think there is more of that, yes. So we see a number of ridings where there's more than one woman running, and in some cases they're winnable ridings for both parties. So in fact, we won't see those all of those 40 women elected. But you know, when I look at the situation in the province, the political situation overall, looking at the polls, it looks rather similar to 2011. So when you look at the 40 women who are running in winnable ridings, my expectation is that we're not going to elect a lot more women this time, just given the overall political situation and
where they're running.
Yes, exactly, where they're running. So I expect that we may see an increase, but I'm not expecting a big increase in the numbers. So you can start with more women running and end up with not a lot more women winning.
Unless they run in winnable ridings, for sure.
Yes, and looking at the situation right now in this election campaign, I don't think we're going to see a lot more women winning ridings.
Well, let's go back. You're talking about the finish line. I want to go back to the starting line.
Okay.
I've always heard that it's harder for women to win nominations because a lot of the rules, the traditions, the practices that are in place, in some respects favor men. Everything from access to money, access to resources, access to volunteers, willingness to get out there and do whatever it takes to win, which tends to be a more male than female quality.
Tough game, yeah.
Yeah. Has anything changed enough in your view today compared to, say, 10 years ago to make winning nominations easier for women?
Well, I think it is easier than it used to be, and I think the numbers prove that. So I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of the ability of women to win these ridings. But in the end, I think what it actually takes is a concerted effort on the part of the parties to make this a priority for women to win the nominations.
What could they do?
Well, one party, New Democratic Party, and we see the number of candidates they have a concerted effort, and I say this as a nonpartisan because I don't belong to any party, but I say it as a nonpartisan person. They have a process whereby they direct their riding associations to seek female and minority candidates when a riding comes open. And because of that concerted effort, they've actually been able to come forward with more candidates, more women as candidates. And we can see it flows over into their caucus. Look at the Ontario NDP caucus and look at the federal caucus when Jack Layton was leader. All those women, 39% of their caucus is female, compared to 24% of overall parliament and 28% of Queen's Park. So it can be done if the parties take it seriously and put the resources into it and change their processes, say, okay, this is important and let's do it.
Having said that, there clearly seem to be parts of the province where it's easier to get elected, to win a nomination and get elected as a woman. And there are parts of the province where it's harder to do that.
Yes.
You can't help but notice that in the bigger cities, more women participate.
It's true.
In the north and in rural Ontario, fewer.
Yeah.
Can you do anything about that?
Well, the culture in those areas is a little bit different, and certainly the research has shown when it comes to rural areas that there are hierarchies in communities that have to do with politics, and those hierarchies have tended to exclude women. So there is a kind of a cultural difference. And also in those areas, the members of parliament are seen as kind of patrons of the area, right? So you're supposed to bring home the bacon, you're supposed to bring home jobs and play that kind of a role. And women haven't been able to play that role as well as men in the past.
That is a more stereotypically male role, you're saying?
Yes,
the bring home the bacon role.
Exactly. So bringing home the goodies to the riding and playing that kind of a role. And that the research does show that is more predominant in rural and northern ridings than it is in urban ridings, where it's very different expectations of your member of parliament or your MPP. That's something that, and it is breaking down. I mean, it is changing. We do see women who have represented the north and do today. So as everything else in politics, I think it's changing for the better.
And will Friday as well, if my sources are right. that will happen as well. Here's the overarching question, though, of course. I mean, beyond the fact that we're 50-50, roughly, male-female in the general population, and therefore you'd like your legislature, your parliament, to reflect that divide as much as you possibly can. And we've argued about this on this program forever, but let's do it again. Is there really something women bring to the table in politics that's different from men that we're not getting now because the numbers are so imbalanced?
Yes.
What is it?
Okay. Let me mention a couple of things that I think are really important. First of all, it is an issue of democratic representation. So women are 51% of the population and are not represented in numbers. So therefore, our voices are not there to be expressed. So it is, first of all, an issue of representation, democratic representation. Secondly, and I can say this from my years as a pollster, there are gender gaps, there are differences between men and women in a variety of areas, topics that relate to public policy. For example, women are much more interested than men in spending on healthcare, spending on education, spending on social services, dealing with poverty, all of those kinds of issues. Women are more interested in those than men are. So to the extent that women aren't there, those views aren't represented. And there's another area that I've seen, especially more at the federal level than the provincial. There's a huge gender gap in almost anything that has to do with the military deployment, military spending, huge differences between men and women. So, see, that's what women would bring. Those views would be better represented if we had more women at Queen's Park.
But you say that, and I can give you lots of examples of women MPPs at Queen's Park who can bloviate with the best of the men, who are as macho and all of those unappealing qualities in male politicians that we know of. I wonder whether that sort of, puts a bit of a lie to what you've just said. A lie is too strong. It questions whether what you just said.
Well, I am talking about public policy. and the orientation that more women have in terms of what they think should be done and what they think public spending should be focused on. So that is a real difference. You are also referring to the style differences, and
right.
as opposed to with a sort of consensual mode of leadership. And I think we would see more of that as well if we had more women represented.
This has been, I hope you won't mind my characterizing it this way, but last summer, what was it? 6 premiers representing 87% of the Canadian population were women.
Yes.
And then we've had a few elections since then, and now there's 2 left.
Yeah.
And who knows, after tomorrow night, maybe there'll be 1 left. I mean,
Correct.
Who knows? What do you infer from that?
Oh, it's very disappointing. First of all, just to go back to having the 6 female premiers, that was a huge development in my opinion. I think that was really, really significant. I've been talking about how we've been changing, and I do believe we've been changing for the better. I think it showed us, first of all, that the party people who run the political parties, felt that women were winnable, that you could have a female leader and she would win for their party. So I think that's a huge development.
Except none of them did.
Oh, they did, because they all faced elections, and they all won elections, except for our premier tomorrow. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But they all went through elections. Kathy Dunderdale won her election.
She won, and then it fell apart quickly. Allison Redford won, and then it fell apart quickly.
But they did win. They all, Pauline Marois won her first election.
And then it fell apart quickly.
Yes, okay, but they all, they all won. And this showed that the public is quite happy to vote for females, a party with a female leader. I think the female brand is a good brand.
Well, except that, for example, Allison Redford, you're right, she did win when all the polls said she wasn't going to win. She became Premier of Alberta, and then what was she accused of doing? Autocratic, no ear to the ground, non-consensual, doing all the stuff that typical male politicians do. How do you explain that?
I agree. Well, I think it's really disappointing. If I were her, I would have stuck it out. I think she quit too early. I think that was really unfortunate. I think Kathy Dunderdale quit too early as well. I don't know if they were forced out. I don't know what was happening behind the scenes, but I think those 2 premiers...
They were forced out.
Well, they were, but I think they should have stuck it out. I think they would have. I think they would have been able to be successful, or at least a chance at winning another election, but they just decided, for whatever reasons, the pressure was too much, or they just got the heat and decided to leave.
So you can say that. I could not say that. If I said they took the heat and then they decided not to stick it out, that's sexist. But you just said it. You just said it, and a lot of people have observed that if it was a guy, they would have stuck it out. But
yes, but also I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, I have a strong feeling that they were actually pushed. So I think that's an element of it too. But I think it's a really important development in our politics. In the past, parties used to choose women leaders to be sacrificial lambs, to go to the slaughter and head losing parties. These are all winning parties. The Ontario Liberal Party does not see itself as a losing party. They chose Kathleen Wynne because they thought she could win. And so did each of those other parties who chose those women.
And actually, the alternative to Kathleen Wynne was also a woman. So they realized.
Exactly.
Okay, we got a minute left here. Let me try this. This is the first time, as we pointed out, ever in Ontario history that there's 2 major party leaders that are led by women and just 1 by a man. Do you think that's changed the dynamic of the campaign at all?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, when it comes to the policy issues, I think those women do represent the kinds of policy concerns and interests that women have. But on the side of the style and the way they're conducting politics, I don't see any difference right now. I honestly don't. And this has been a very tough campaign, and those women have been there with their elbows up, just like any man would. So I haven't seen that change. And how to explain it? They're running a campaign, and their strategists are telling them they have to do this, and they're doing it. So I haven't seen that part of female politics yet, Steve.
Donna, answer me this. Who's going to win tomorrow night?
It's too close to call.
I know it is. It is. I've never seen it like this before.
It started as a dull campaign, and it's turned out to be a really, really interesting
Could be a very long night.
Could be.
Donna, it's good of you to come into TVO tonight and share your views with us. Thanks so much. Donna Dasko, the co-founder of Equal Voice.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.